In a faraway land where winters were long and the nights stretched endlessly, there was a small village surrounded by mountains. Life there was not easy. The soil was rocky, the harvests uncertain, and storms often swept across the valley. The people worked hard, but many carried sorrow in their hearts, for they felt trapped in struggle. Among them lived a traveler who had once seen many lands. He had walked through deserts and forests, crossed rivers and seas. Yet he chose to stay in this difficult place, and strangely, he was known to be the most cheerful soul in the village. Whether the sun shone or the storms raged, his spirit seemed unbroken. One evening, while the wind howled and the villagers huddled inside their homes, a young villager approached the traveler and asked, "How do you remain so positive in such dark times? The fields fail us, the nights are cold, and the future is uncertain. Yet you smile as though you carry a light no darkness can touch. What is your secret?" The traveler simply said, "Come with me tomorrow at dawn, and I will show you." The first lesson, the candle in the cave. At dawn, the traveler led the villager to a deep cave in the mountains. Inside, it was pitch dark. The air was cold and heavy, and the silence felt endless. The villager shivered. The traveler then lit a small candle. Immediately, the darkness retreated, and the space was filled with a gentle glow. The villager stared at the flame and felt comfort in its warmth. The traveler said softly, "See how one small flame changes the whole cave? Darkness does not disappear by force. It disappears when light enters. In life, you cannot fight darkness with anger or despair, but a single spark of hope, a single act of kindness, a single grateful thought, these are enough to begin driving the darkness away." The villager nodded slowly, realizing that the candle was more than fire. It was a symbol of inner light. The second lesson, the professor's jar. The traveler then took the villager to a nearby monastery, where a professor was teaching students. On the table before him stood an empty jar. He filled it first with large stones until no more could fit. Then he asked the students, "Is the jar full?" They answered, "Yes." The professor smiled and poured in pebbles, which filled the spaces between the stones. Again he asked, "Is it full?" The students said yes. Finally, he poured in sand, filling every tiny gap. Then he said, "This jar is like life. The big stones are what truly matters: health, family, purpose, kindness. The pebbles are smaller needs, like work and possessions. The sand is everything else: distractions, worries, trivial things. If you fill the jar with sand first, there will be no room for the stones. But if you put the stones first, there will always be space for the rest." The villager understood. Dark times often feel heavier because people fill their minds with sand, unnecessary worries, and comparisons. To stay positive, one must place the stones first, focusing on what truly matters. The third lesson, the two wolves. As they returned from the monastery, the traveler shared another story. Inside every person, he said, there are two wolves. One wolf is anger, fear, envy, despair. The other is courage, kindness, gratitude, and hope. These wolves are always fighting. The villager asked, "Which wolf wins?" The traveler replied, "The one you feed. If you keep feeding fear with constant worry, it will grow strong. But if you feed hope by practicing gratitude, courage, and kindness, the other wolf will guide you through any darkness." The villager felt a deep silence in his heart. He realized that staying positive was not waiting for good times, but choosing which wolf to feed even in the worst of storms. The fourth lesson, the broken pot. On their way back to the village, they passed a river. Along the path walked a water carrier with two pots slung across his shoulders. One pot was whole, the other cracked, leaking water drop by drop. The villager asked the traveler, "Why does he not fix the broken pot? It loses so much water." The water carrier overheard and smiled. "Look at the path we walk," he said. Along the side where the cracked pot dripped, wildflowers bloomed in bright colors. Every drop that was lost gave life to these flowers. Though broken, this pot still carries beauty into the world. The traveler whispered, "So it is with us. Even in brokenness, we can bring life to others. Do not let dark times make you blind to the flowers you may still nurture." The fifth lesson, the storm and the tree. As night fell, thunder roared across the valley, and the two took shelter under a great tree. The storm raged with heavy rain and strong winds. The villager feared the tree would collapse, but it stood firm. When the storm passed, the traveler touched the trunk and said, "Do you know why this tree survives every storm? It bends. It does not resist the wind with anger, nor does it break from fear. It yields and sways, but its roots are deep. So must we be. Dark times come like storms. If you resist with anger, you may break. But if you stay rooted in gratitude, bend with patience, and wait with faith, you will rise again when the storm is over." The villager looked at the tree in awe. For the first time, he felt hope not as an idea, but as something real, like roots beneath his own feet. The final lesson, the light within. At last, they returned to the village. The traveler looked at the villager and said, "You asked me how to stay positive in dark times. Now you know. Carry a candle of hope in your heart. Place the big stones of life before the small worries. Feed the wolf of courage and kindness. See the beauty even in brokenness. Stand like the tree, bending but rooted. Darkness outside is not in your control, but the light within, that is always yours to protect." The villager's eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow, but of gratitude. He realized that positivity was not about ignoring suffering, but about carrying a light that no storm could extinguish. From that day on, whenever the village faced hardship, people looked to him for comfort. And he would share the lessons of the traveler, the professor, the wolves, the broken pot, and the tree. The village did not grow richer in gold or easier in labor, but it grew richer in spirit. For even in the longest winters, the people learned to keep a light within their hearts, and thus no darkness could defeat them. To stay positive in dark times, one must remember that light does not come from outside, but from within. By holding hope, focusing on what truly matters, feeding courage, embracing even brokenness, and staying rooted like a tree, anyone can walk through darkness and still find peace.